Exodus chapter 40. God spoke to Moses. On the first day of the first month, set up the dwelling, the tent of meeting. Place the chest of the testimony in it and screen the chest with the curtain. Bring in the table and set it, arranging its lampstand and lamps. Place the golden altar of incense before the chest of the testimony and hang the curtain at the door of the dwelling. Place the altar of whole burnt offerings at the door of the dwelling, the tent of meeting. Place the washbasin between the tent of meeting and the altar and fill it with water. Set up the courtyard on all sides and hang the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard. Then take the anointing oil and anoint the dwelling and everything in it. Consecrate it and all its furnishings so that it becomes holy. Anoint the altar of whole burnt offerings and all its utensils, consecrating the altar so that it is completely holy. Anoint the washbasin and its base, consecrate it. Finally, bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting and wash them in water. Dress Aaron in the sacred vestments, anoint him, consecrate him to serve me as priest. Bring his sons and put tunics on them, anoint them just as you anointed their father to serve me as priests. Their anointing will bring them into the perpetual priesthood down through the generations. Moses did everything God commanded. He did it all. On the first day of the first month of the second year, the dwelling was set up. Moses set it up. He laid its bases, erected the frame, placed the crossbars, set the posts, spread the tent over the dwelling, and put the covering over the tent, just as God had commanded Moses. He placed the testimony in the chest, inserted the poles for carrying the chest, and placed the lid, the Atonement-Cover, on it. He brought the chest into the dwelling and set up the curtain, screening off the chest of the testimony, just as God had commanded Moses. He placed a table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the dwelling outside the curtain and arranged the bread there before God, just as God had commanded Moses. He placed the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the dwelling and set up the lamps before God, just as God had commanded him. Moses placed the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the curtain and burned fragrance offering on it, just as God had commanded him. He placed the screen at the entrance to the dwelling. He set the altar of whole burnt offerings at the door of the dwelling, the tent of meeting, and offered up the whole burnt offerings and the grain offerings just as God had commanded. He placed the washbasin between the tent of meeting and the altar and filled with water for washing. Moses and Aaron and his sons washed their feet and hands there. Then they entered the tent of meeting, and when they served at the altar, they washed, just as God had commanded Moses. Finally, he erected the courtyard all around the dwelling and the altar, and put up the screen for the courtyard entrance. Moses finished the work. The cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of God filled the dwelling. Moses couldn't enter the tent of meeting because the cloud was upon it, and the glory of God filled the dwelling. Whenever the cloud lifted from the dwelling, the people of Israel set out on their travels. But if the cloud did not lift, they wouldn't set out until it did lift. The cloud of God was over the dwelling during the day, and the fire was in it at night, visible to all the Israelites in all their travels.